Going into 2015, we had a commander option that fundamentally broke the rules of the game. This was a commander that used to be the most built around and most played in the format. I've been paying attention to EDHREC.com's data for the past 8 years, and it's really been fascinating to watch it grow. The commander option here, Oloro Ageless Ascetic, was the first to reach 1,000 decks built back in 2014 and 2015, when Commander/EDH was still young. It had been around for a while, but before 2013, we only had the first Commander product in 2011. So for this Commander option to reach 1,000 decks built on EDHREC, it was a pretty big deal. The website, of course, gathers deck list data to figure out what players are including in the majority of decks. It offers you the percentages of the most played cards, but in general, it will keep track of how many decks are being built, even if they're totally different decks around a specific commander. Fast forward to 2022 and it's a completely different story. While Oloro still sees a decent number of decks being built around him, we are way past the days of being afraid of gaining 2 life at the beginning of an upkeep for doing absolutely nothing. Let me repeat, you will gain 2 life at the beginning of your upkeep for doing absolutely nothing. People have tried to compare this to Eminence, and I can see why. Whenever you have a commander that doesn't need to be on the field to have some purpose, it's gonna get the Oloro comparisons. However, Eminence will still require you to do something. Oloro's trigger just says, exist and play Oloro as your commander. Let's just say that if you gained anything more than 2 life for doing nothing, we would be approaching power 9 levels of busted. Fundamentally, that remains one of the most busted abilities a commander has ever had. So let's break down the reasons why Oloro was desirable going into 2015. You gained 2 life during your upkeep for nothing. You had access to 3 colors to build around, so you had plenty of flexibility. You didn't have to go pure life gain, even though a lot of people did. Having blue in there meant you had perfect control colors. Another reason why it was so busted, you could play Pillow Fort and sit behind a wall of things like Propaganda, Ghostly Prison, gaining 2 life at a time and constantly building up a wall. We had a mid-game draw engine as well. Granted, it's not as desirable as it used to be, even if you didn't want to play Oloro because he was just better as a commander option in the command zone. Playing him as a worst case scenario was always fun because you could at least get some extra card draw out of it. Unless your opponents can prevent life gain, you are guaranteed to get that trigger. So you're only paying 1 mana to draw an additional card during your upkeep. And in doing this, each opponent is going to lose a life. Keep in mind you gain 2 life whether he's in the command zone or not. So another reason why this was a great control commander, if you can continue to draw into your answers, if your commander offers you that, it's going to make playing your deck a lot easier. Another reason why this was a desirable commander is because it broke even with Nekasar the Mindraiser. Also from Commander 2013, this was a very popular commander, kind of in that Oloro category, where it used to see way more play compared to a lot of other commanders. If you have to lose a life for each card you draw, you would normally lose 2 life. Well, with Oloro, you gain 2 life. So if there was anything that Nekasar and burn decks hated in general, it was when you could consistently negate their efforts. But where is Oloro ranked exactly in 2022? If we were to look at the data on EDHREC.com, unfortunately we can't see all-time data. It would have been really cool if we could see how many decks have been built all-time, but just over the past couple years, there have been over 5,800 decks built, which I did mention earlier how he was the first to get to 1,000, that was a big deal. That was also back around 2015 when a lot of people still didn't care about Commander. And I'm not going to try to tell you that this is a bad placement. Getting within the top 50 of the most played commanders in the past 2 years is still an accomplishment. It's just a considerable drop from where he used to be at the top. Especially when we consider that the most built around commander still is Atraxa Praetor's voice. Once we got Commander 2016, it just seemed like everybody jumped on board the Atraxa bandwagon. And in the past 2 years, compared to Oloro, she has a whopping 13,000 decks built. That is just ridiculous, and going into making this video, I wanted to understand why. You have another gimmicky commander here. The gimmick this time is getting a proliferate trigger at the beginning of your end step. You have to have her out there on the field, so it's not nearly as busted in ability. But she comes with 4 pretty powerful combat keyword abilities. Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink, she's also very unique in being a 4-colored commander. We still don't have that many of them, and it's been 6 years since Commander 2016. This is not a newer commander. She's been around for quite some time. So the argument that people got fatigued with Oloro just doesn't really make sense to me. So again, I needed to figure out why this happened. Is it the coolness factor? Are people just drawn to cool commander options because they look cool or they do something that's cool? I think Oloro looks pretty cool. I don't know, what do you guys think? Then we have another example of a commander that is not just old, it's even older than Oloro. Kalia of the Vast has over 8,200 decks built in the past 2 years, and it's another gimmicky commander. This time, the gimmick is pretty linear. You're going 3 different tribes, so you know you're not going to stray too far from that central strategy. Cheating into play big angels, demons, and dragons, it's not overly complicated. You know exactly what the Kalia deck is going to do. It's a bit of a one-trick pony as well, so I wanted to understand why. If Oloro is a gimmicky commander and people got fatigued, how do you explain Kalia still being one of the most built-around commanders, even though she's been around for over 10 years? What makes me even more curious is that we have Krenko Mob Boss over the same period of time with way more decks built over 7,700. This strategy is even more linear, even more limited, but it has that goblin thing going for it. It's one where I honestly felt that people would have been bored of, but it's another one where it's been at least 10 years, still going strong. So I must ask again, what is going on? Because from my experience with all of the commander options from Commander 2013, I thought we had a pretty fun set of options here. You had very unique playstyles with Nekasar and Derevi, Prosh was all power, and Marath was a fun twist on the typical +1/+1 counter strategy. I remember most of these commanders being the most built around in the format. Again, this is mostly weird within the context of Kalia being played at a tremendous rate, Krenko being played at a tremendous rate, even though they're both older than all of these. And what's even more surprising is not just how far Oloro has dropped, but with how far Derevi has dropped. We're looking at ranked 109, with only 3,300 built. Prosh, Skyraider of Care, is my personal favorite commander of all time, and we're looking at rank 188 with only 2,300 built. If you're a fan of Marath, well, this is going to be painful. Rank 293 with only 1,500 built. Again, all of these within the past couple years have dropped significantly, nowhere near as popular as they used to be. So then I have to ask why? Why is this happening? We do have some standouts like Kalia, but not everything from Commander 2011 has been successful. I think it really is just an instance of that commander being popular because of the cool factor. When we got Commander 2015, Marina Clan, Neltoth was the cool kid. Not so much anymore. But we still have to then ask, why is this happening to commander options that used to dominate, that used to see the most decks built? And I think I found an answer. If you think of Commander as more of an RPG, which it really is compared to pretty much any other format, you pick a commander, your commander serves a role. That's really about as far as the comparison goes, but I like to think of the format as an RPG because you are choosing a commander for a specific role. If you want a big brawling commander option, you can do that. But when we talk about Atraxa, Kalia, and Krenko, they all serve a specific role, and they are central to that role succeeding. Atraxa's role is getting counters, getting more counters. It doesn't matter what the counters are. You want to get more of them consistently. Kalia's role is aggression, just nothing but non-stop cheating creatures into play, keeping your foot on the pedal, damaging your opponents. And Krenko's role is getting more tokens, specifically goblin tokens. There's really no mystery here, so in the case of Oloro, we have the role of life gain, we have a medic. More of a defender than anything else. And here is really the reason why Oloro has lost its popularity, at least percentage-wise compared to a lot of the top commanders in the format. When people choose a commander option, they don't want to pillow fort, they don't want to turtle. They want to be more aggressive, they want to have more interaction. And unfortunately, when it comes to Oloro, gaining 2 life is fun, but often it put a target on your back and you didn't quite have the interaction to follow it up. So your Oloro commander depended way too much on the rest of the 99. Which you should always require a commander that works well with your 99. But if you need the rest of your 99 there to do everything, to benefit off of the 2 life you're gaining, that life gain trigger, compared to all of these other commanders, you're going to be a bit behind. So it's that role that is really holding him back compared to a lot of the commanders of 2022. He's not going to be on the field most of the time, and even if he is, he's overcosted for just drawing extra cards. I've mentioned several times that the sweet spot for commander options is 3 or 4 mana. This allows you to spend more mana actually synergizing with your commander when your commander is actually on the field. If you have to spend 6 mana and then an additional mana just to draw another card, it's going to make things slower. Card draw isn't quite to the point where mana is, where you want to stop drawing cards at a certain mana because ramp is really intended to be early game. You wouldn't necessarily want to ramp for 6 mana, but at the same time, while you're a bit more flexible with how much you would spend for more card draw, you certainly wouldn't want to spend 6 mana just to get some additional card draw, only one at a time for an additional 1 mana. So now that we've identified the role here, it is life gain, let's look at the top commanders in the life gain theme. And the most recent one is Shana Purifying Blade from Dominaria United. Do you notice anything different? It's a 3 mana commander, it's right in that sweet spot. And while you are spending mana to draw cards, you're actually drawing way more at a time because it's totaling up how much life you've gained during the turn. So you're going to get your commander out there earlier in the game, you're going to satisfy the role a lot more efficiently. Lysa Shroud of Dusk is also another life gain themed commander, but in this case it's all about punishing your opponents, slowly grinding them down by taxing them every time they play a spell. They gotta lose 2 life each time. So the role here isn't specifically life gain, which is something you'll notice about a lot of commander options. Gaining life is just an aspect, it's not the central strategy. Dina Soulsteeper is one of the few where it is specifically just life gain. That is all you want to do in the deck. You can have other things, but the central strategy is life gain. So you don't have too many commander options like this, which indicates that there is less of a desire from Wizards of the Coast to make a commander where it's just about gaining life, because usually life is worth giving up in commander. Life is a resource. It's not like in other formats where you start out at 20. Here you can afford to lose several life during your turns just to get some extra card draw. It's just not as desirable a strategy anymore. And another reason why Oloro has fallen off a bit, it's just the average cost of a commander. It's not like Oloro really did that much when he was on the field to begin with, but just to get him out there for the first time is going to cost you 6 mana. Just over the past few years, the top new commanders in the format are not going to cost you much more than 4. If things like Goshintai of Life's Origin, Will Help the Rock Cleaver, Prosper Tomebound, Lathril, Blade of the Elves. If you have to wait to get to your commander's typically not going to be that strong. And if you do have to spend 6 mana on a commander, it better be pretty good when it's on the field. That was always the Achilles heel to Oloro decks, was that because you had the most busted upkeep trigger, the rest of him wasn't that strong. But for 6 mana, you have popular commanders like Miram Sentinel Worm, Niv Mizzet Perun, Muldrotha the Gravetide, Edgar Markov. These just do way more. You would compare them to a 4 mana or a 3 mana commander option, and you would feel that the 6 mana is entirely worth it. So there it is. There is the reason why. If you're like me, if you've been studying EDHREC.com for a while, you've seen the ups and downs. You've seen commanders that used to be top ranked fall down into obscurity. And while Oloro is still pretty relevant, 38 is still great. We're talking about a commander option that's already 9 years old. It does still feel weird to see one that was the top ranked. It wasn't even close between Oloro and the second best commanders in 2013 and 2014. There was just so much to like about the control colors, the life gain trigger that was busted. To not be one of the top played commanders anymore just feels weird. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Again, if you appreciate these videos, subscribe to the channel. Commander Void here signing off. I will see you all next time.